Hi, Tom.
Hi, Dean.
Tom, tell folks a little bit about you, and then I want to run you through some scenarios.
I'd love to. So thanks for having me.
Sure.
I'm a fractional sales leader, which is a mouthful. I'm sure we'll get into it. My private company is Focus Insights Group Inc., and I'm here in
Mhm.
Florida, and I'm actually affiliated with Sales Acceleration. So I'm a sales acceleration advisor.
All right. I guess for disclosure, Sales Acceleration is my client as well. I mean, we haven't worked together in over a year, but I
Mm,
wrote part of their homepage. So, full
Terrific.
disclosure, there was a business
Excellent.
relationship, but that's not why you're here. Okay.
No.
So here, let's talk about the first scenario. So you've got a new client. Okay. And a lot of your work, like most of my work, is virtual, right? But
Mhm.
in this case, the client's only 5 minutes from your home, so you're actually going to go there at Monday morning on your first day after you've signed them, and just walk in and be there. So when you walk in to a brand new engagement like that, what's the sort of nightmare scenario you might be walking into as a fractional CRO, and what is the dream scenario?
Oh, I love it. And I've participated in both multiple times. So
I bet.
you can see it. And it's happened before where you're all set, the contract's
Sure.
been signed, you're ready to go. It's going to be a great engagement. You're excited. And you show up, and your contact, usually the owner or the CEO,
Right.
just didn't show up. They're not
Yeah.
there. In fact, the staff doesn't really know where they're there. And you have this whole presentation ready, et cetera. So that does happen on occasion, and that's a moment when you really have to question commitment and understand what happens. You know that things come up, and we fully understand that. But sometimes folks will make a decision, set it and forget it, and you really
Right.
do have to say, how committed are you? And then in the dream scenario, I just love it because you can see when you come in, there's like this dichotomy of emotions. One, you can see a group that's kind of beaten up, right? They've
Yeah.
been through the meat grinder a bit, but then you see this hope. When you're coming in, you can see they're like, help us, help us, help us.
Right.
And that really does show that commitment and just, where you kind of say, yeah, this is going to be hard. We're going to do some difficult things. If you could do it yourself, you would have done it. And this is where we're going to go. So it's really, that's the dream scenario when you see people ready, a little bit nervous, a little bit scared because they're not really
Right.
sure how it's going to go, but they want change. They want it desperately. And when we get to the leadership chair, they want ROI. They want to do better. It's really eating at them and they want to be in a better place. So that is the perfect scenario when people are like, we're ready. What we've done in the past hasn't worked. We're excited. We're putting our faith in you. That's a dream scenario.
All right. Let's talk about putting their faith in you. So it's not day one, it's day 90,
Yes.
right? What's the aha moment that happened with that client between day one and day 90, looking at you and how you're approaching things and what you're trying to put into place and what's getting accomplished? What's there like, all right, I kind of understood that we needed someone in charge of this, but the real aha moment for me came because I saw what?
Yes. So it's funny because it happens in two ways. And I often say this when we come on the scene, we have a lot of knowledge and experience from our past, a lot of party
Right.
tricks, right? And so when we come in and start to show them a little bit of what's possible and how the process will work, they feel like we walk on water. They're like, how do you know that stuff?
Yeah.
That is just incredible. And about that 90-day mark, I think is about when they go, well, you don't walk on water anymore. We see what you do. But the aha moment is we see what you do.
Right.
Now we see that the two things that you told us were the most important things, the people and the processes, we've started to put those together. And 90 days is a good time because you start to see things work and you start to say, and you really have to reinforce it, just like any good salesperson. Just say, hey, remember where we were before when we weren't scoring leads and
Right.
it was just haphazard? You see how we're doing now, and our conversion rate is actually cut in half. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, that's ROI. And just remember, we're only getting started. The first 90 days, we're building the house.
Yeah.
We're going to live in it for years. And that's where the other work takes place. But this is it. And that's when they start to go, oh, we can do this. And you suddenly get them, they start asking questions. Yes, but what about this? And some of it's really insightful. I'm like, great question. We've been doing it together. So that aha
Yeah.
moment is when they finally really get engaged into what's happening and they see that the ROI is possible. That's nirvana.
All right. All right. So next scenario, you're on stage, you're the speaker. There's 250 people in the audience. They all, came out of corporate, and they all became a fractional CRO yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday, right? It's Tuesday. So I'm going to give you 3 sentences. I'll start them, and then you finish them with however long it takes to finish the sentence. But we're going to talk to this audience of freshly baked, right out of the oven fractional CROs. Okay.
That's
So
great. I love this.
sentence
Yeah.
number 1, just starting out, guys, folks, as a fractional CRO, you're going to be shocked by
The fact that people are not as interested in you as you thought they would be.
uh, I have this conversation with almost every customer because I write outbound, right? I kind of
Right.
interrupt people for a living on behalf of clients, and I say, look, man, I say, like, there's 2 points that could happen in your life where it sounds like terrible news until you realize how freeing it is. One is when the doctor tells you how long you have left to live. Terrible, but then you're like, yeah, it's time to prioritize. I am gonna, like, jump out of an airplane
Yeah.
or go to the Grand Canyon, right? And the other is when you really appreciate the freedom that comes from the fact that strangers you want to connect with do not care about you. They don't even think about you. They have very full and busy lives, and if you never entered it, they'd be fine,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it's very freeing for how to think about and get outside your own head once you realize they don't care about you and they're not thinking about you.
Yeah, and in all seriousness, you're hitting that really important point.
Yeah.
It is not important what you did in the past.
No.
It's not important what your accolades are or how great you are or how awesome your LinkedIn feed is. What's most important is what you can do for somebody else to help them get what they want. And so you have to learn how to create your messaging in a way that delivers value from their perspective. Because while you probably are cool and you've got lots of great things you've
Sure.
done and you're amazing, that is only important insofar as it is building blocks for the client or prospect to get what they want. And
Yeah.
if you lose sight of that, you start to believe your own press clippings and you'll miss the point. And
Yep.
trust me, I've done it many times. And you have to continue to amp up your game so that you have the perspective of deep investigation. Where's the problem? How much does it hurt?
Right.
Will the patient die if we don't fix this? And
I
that's
have
really
a slide
critical.
that I show everyone. It's just a big picture with a guy. He's looking at the camera and just a few people around him. And the caption just says, show that you understand me, then I might try to understand you. And he's the prospect.
I love that.
That's it. And he's
Yeah.
not happy in the picture, right? It's a challenge. It's not a request. Okay.
Yeah.
So then you're about halfway through your speech with these folks, and you
Yeah.
come on this line and you say, and the other, something else I need to tell you, most companies, most clients just don't understand what.
That the 2 critical pieces are people and process. And I've said it before, but it's amazing when you go into a company how those 2 things are out of killywampus
Yeah.
and really success is not possible, that those must be addressed. And yet most clients will think of a symptom or something they did with marketing or a tactic that's put them in this place. And
Yeah.
we actually have to back up and say it's simpler and yet more complicated than that. And that's the piece that most clients will not understand. And it's our obligation to help them understand that it's critical.
All right. So they're trying to pull you off stage, right? Some intern is like, come on, we gotta go.
Yeah,
It's like the
here comes
Oscars.
the
The
hook.
music's coming up, right? All
Yeah.
right. Tom keeps talking. And Tom, you're telling them, like, hey, they're trying to get me off the stage, but one thing I'm going to tell you before they pull me off here as a fractional CRO, the most important lesson I can tell you about getting new clients is what?
Be authentic. There's a lot of marketing out there. There's a lot of spin. AI can create content like nobody's business, and it's a great tool. But
Yeah,
be authentic. Tell people who you do, how you help, how you've helped others in the past, because it's going to do 2 things. Number one, it's going to make you more approachable, more memorable. So that's really important. But really critically, it's going to keep you out of engagements you don't belong in. because we've all done that where we took on a
Yeah.
project. Yeah, I'll take it on. Why not? And we realized probably in 15 minutes, we probably shouldn't have. So if you remain to your authentic self, true to you, you will do a finer job for your clients, and you won't hopefully get into engagements where you're not really able to deliver the value that you're capable of. Those are the important ones to me.
Right. Okay. So as you're talking to prospective clients, okay, and sales is one of those topics where leadership in a company, especially CEO, uh, tend to either, if they haven't come from sales, they believe they have a very good understanding of selling,
Mm-hmm.
right? So as you're talking to prospective clients, what do they talk about that you think is overrated? And what underrated thing about success in selling or company wide or whatever that you think is just criminally underrated? So what's overrated when you're talking to people and what's underrated when you're talking to these clients?
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit different from industry to industry, but I
Yeah,
would say
sure.
the big pain point out there is that a lot of companies that don't really understand sales, we can get into what that
Sure.
means. They will then go to the easy button, easy expensive button, and probably crank up Google ads and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. And people think, and in the beginning, it generates volume, so they feel like, this works. What they don't really seem to understand is that that has a short tail, and unless you're going to continue to change the messaging and make it fresh, it
Right.
loses effectiveness and becomes more expensive over time. So a lot of folks miss that. And I'll tell them, look, marketing is important. It's a part of your strategy for sure, and it must be aligned with your salespeople. But I'm here to tell you that sales conversions can be helped through marketing. But the way you're going to get clients is by using that marketing to embellish and help what you're already talking about in terms of their pain point. So marketing is a necessary thing. It is not all of it. And I have a lot of clients that is their sales strategy, is spending more
Mm-hmm.
and more money on ads, and they become less effective over time. I know you know about that, but
Mm-hmm.
I find that's a huge gap in understanding. And I'll even tell certain clients, I'm like, you know what, we're going to stop spending $30,000 a month because it's not getting the effectiveness. In
Right.
fact, ROI, we're going to get a much better bang for our buck if we address the two big ones in the room: people, processes. It's going to be more effective. It'll take longer, but it's going to be more sustainable, and you're going to get better results. So I think that's a gap in understanding that a lot of people, and they're just victims of advertising, right? Advertising
Right.
about advertising. And there's a lot of that.
Yeah. Okay. Is there
Yeah.
anything that you wish companies would focus on? Any sort of the fundamentals? Anything that's just underrated? Too underrated?
Yeah, the big one that I always talk about, and again, it's in the people category, it's
Mm-hmm.
recruiting. When I go into many companies, and this is any size company, could be, Fortune 100, the world is full of mediocre sales managers who were once top of their game in sales.
Yeah.
And we see that trend happen a lot. Let's reward the top salesperson because they've obviously done it. They know how to do it. Put them in the chair and make everybody as good as they are. And it rarely works
Yeah.
because the two skill sets are completely different. The personality profiles are way different. It is possible to transition, but it's a very long process, and it requires really a lot of investment and commitment on the individual's time. So, in my opinion, the one big takeaway is you start from scratch. You use sales only recruiters that only work in that space. You use assessments. And then the final thing that I'm famous for, that people are like, really, are we going to do that again? If we're going to hire a new salesperson, I want them to interview with every person conceivably in the company, even if it's an outside vendor or somebody else, and take them to lunch, make them interview while they're eating, all of those things. Because as a salesperson, I can probably put up a fake facade for a period
Mhm.
of time, but I'll get tired.
Yeah.
And I tell people, you're making a $200,000, $300,000 decision that you're just going on gut feel. I know you wouldn't do that with any other investment in your company. So let's
Right.
not do that with one that has to perform. So that's really my big takeaway: is it's the people, the recruiting part of it is really pretty abysmal in most companies.
Okay. So then what defines sales in 2025? Is it any different than 5, 10 years ago?
I think it is. It never changes. It's always relationship building. So it's
Mhm.
never going to change. It's people buy from people. And I even say, even if you're selling nuts and bolts,
Mhm.
hard to get emotional about that. But it is the individual you're working with that is the person I go to. That's my person. That's what I do. So that's really, really critical. So be that, that individual, be the one that's indispensable, be the one that is a go-to. I even have clients that I worked with 3 years ago. I'll just get that phone call. Hey, buddy, I got something. What do you think? Are you going to bill me for this? I'm like, of course not. Just tell me what you're doing,
Right.
right? When you're like that, you become a resource forever, and then you can kind of spread it out for sure.
All right, good. So as you're talking to prospective clients, right, in your head during that conversation, you're trying to assess whether it's a good fit, whether A, good fit for you, or B, whether this company should be talking to fractional CROs at all,
Mhm.
right? So what's a green flag and what's a red flag when you're talking to prospects
Yeah,
for
the
your
green
for your
flag.
for yourself?
Yeah, the green flag is going to be they have critical mass or they have
Hmm.
funding. That's going to be a part of it because it's really hard for me to do what I do in a company that's bootstrapping. I can give them free advice and things like that, but an engagement is tough. So they have to have critical mass for sure. Uh, Most of the industries that I've done a lot, so high tech, low tech, construction, that's great. But you do run into those clients that are like, we really in our space, we really want to have somebody with experience in this particular space. And I'll kind of talk generically that I don't necessarily agree with that, but totally respect your position. And the good news
Yeah.
being affiliated with Sales Acceleration, I can find them somebody that has
Right.
that specific experience. So a green light for me is in that industry that I like, they're committed, they're ready to go. That's really where they are. They also, most importantly, they have a viable product. And if we're being honest, the world also has a lot of maturing industries,
Yeah.
things that are really hard to get growth going without discounting or without a new mousetrap. And that's a red flag, right? When you see a mature industry that their growth possibility is just not where it needs to be, that's a red flag as well. On the
Right.
other side, if they're growing gangbusters, and this happens a lot, I'll see somebody that's developing SaaS. They're awesome. They can build the mousetrap. They're so
Mhm.
excited about it. They have no clue about how demand is created. And yet they've created something great. That's a great moment to just say, oh my gosh, we can take your raw clay and have a blast with that. So that's a green light for me too. Probably a lot more work for me, but it gets me excited, and especially when they're passionate about it. So those are all green go. Let's do it. And
All
then the
right.
other thing I like to do is sometimes I'm brought in by one of my partners. In fact, it happens a lot. Like a fractional CFO brings me in, or a fractional integrator brings me in. And when that happens, I'm like, this is going to be fun because when great minds are collaborating and brainstorming on behalf of the client wins without spending any more money. So for me, that's like major, major green flag. That's my favorite kind of engagement.
Right. All right. When you especially since you're inside sales X, so there's lots of other people. But
Mhm.
when you're talking to another or you meet another fractional head of sales, right? Is there a question you tend to ask them? And if so, what do they tend to answer with?
Ooh, that's a great question because I do
Yeah.
because it's such a big fraternity out there.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of independents. I usually ask them about their ideal clients to find out
Yeah.
who they're working on and ask them a little bit about their approach. At SX, the nice thing is because we're independent, we kind of can do our engagements whatever way the client does, but we have some really cool tools. So I love to kind of compare and contrast what they do. There are also a lot of fractional CROs that also will do production. So they will do fractional sales,
Right.
and a lot of them are very high end. They are resources for me. So if I have a short term gig that we can pay them a bunch of money to make it rain,
Hmm.
I don't do that piece, but the client may need it. So I always interview them and just say, what angles, how do you help the client? Because it could be that you and I could collaborate because we do different things. So I do that, and I do bring them in because that part of the sales cycle I don't do. And sometimes I need it. And so having a robust network of really smart people that also do what I do, they're not always competitors. And even if they are,
Yeah.
there's so much demand out there. Who cares?
Right.
I like to know everybody. So
All right. This has been fantastic, sir. Thank you very much for
yeah.
this. And welcome to episode 3. One of
Thank
the very
you.
first people on this podcast. And so these days, who should be reaching out to you, and what's the preferred way for them to get to you?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. And this has been a blast, by the way.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
best way to reach me always is on LinkedIn. I'm always on there. Reach out anytime for a
All right.
conversation. If you just have a question or a concern, that's not what we do. We don't just send you an invoice. We got to figure out what you're doing and what you can do. So a lot of times I just help people and do it. So hit me on LinkedIn. We can have a quick chat, just like you and I are on virtual. We're all very comfortable with that now. Anytime, anyhow. I love what I do.
All right, Tom, thank you so much. This has been
Thank you, sir.
fantastic. Loved it.
I did too.
All right. And thanks for watching, everyone. And we'll catch you next time. Bye.